Have you ever noticed how some thoughts stay with you longer than conversations do? How a single sentence can echo for days, while entire social moments fade almost immediately? It's not because you weren't paying attention. It's because your mind lingers where there's depth, not noise. Most people never stop to question that difference. But if you felt it, even quietly, it's worth asking why your inner world seems richer than the places you're asked to share it. You know that feeling when you finish a conversation and nothing was technically wrong, but something inside you feels oddly untouched by it. The words were exchanged, the laughter landed where it was supposed to, the moment passed smoothly. And yet later, when you're alone, there's a faint sense that you are present without being fully involved, like you showed up, but a deeper part of you stayed just out of reach. There's a certain kind of person who has this experience often, not because they dislike people, and not because they can't connect. In fact, they usually connect quite easily on the surface. They're attentive, thoughtful, responsive. They know how to listen. They know how to make others feel comfortable, but there's a quiet awareness that the connection stops somewhere short of where they actually live, internally. Over time, this can start to feel confusing. From the outside, nothing seems missing. Friends exist. Conversations happen. Social life looks functional. And yet there's a recurring sense of being slightly alone inside your own experience. Not dramatically, not painfully every day. Just enough to notice. Just enough to wonder why. This is often misunderstood by others and eventually by the person experiencing it. It can get framed as being too picky, too in your head, emotionally distant or hard to satisfy. Sometimes it's even framed as a personal failing, as if the inability to feel deeply connected in ordinary interactions means something is lacking socially or emotionally. But that framing misses something essential. This isn't about deficiency, it's about orientation. It's about how attention, meaning, and emotional depth are organized in your mind. And when that orientation doesn't match the dominant rhythm of the world around you, loneliness can emerge quietly, even in the middle of connection. What's rarely explained clearly is why intelligent people so often feel lonely in ways that don't match common definitions of loneliness. It's not always about isolation or rejection. Often, it's about depth without reciprocity, awareness without resonance, perception without a shared language to express it. There's more happening here than social preference or personality type. At a psychological level, intelligence is frequently accompanied by heightened complexity of inner experience. Research in cognitive psychology shows that people who score higher in abstract reasoning and integrative thinking tend to process information across multiple layers at once. They don't just register what's happening, they contextualize it, question it, and connect it to broader patterns. Neuroscience adds another layer. Studies on default mode network activity suggest that highly reflective minds spend more time in self-referential processing. This doesn't mean constant rumination. It means an ongoing background awareness of meaning, identity, and implication. Life isn't just happening, it's being interpreted as it unfolds. In everyday terms, this can make simple interactions feel strangely insufficient. Small talk isn't offensive or boring, but it can feel like it's floating on the surface of something much deeper that never gets named. Emotional exchanges that rely on convention rather than authenticity can feel hollow, even when they're pleasant. Over time, this creates a subtle mismatch between inner depth and outer connection. That mismatch is often where loneliness takes root. This way of processing usually didn't appear out of nowhere. It often has developmental roots. Many intelligent people learned early to observe before they spoke, to understand before they reacted. Sometimes this came from growing up around unpredictable emotions, where reading the room was important. Sometimes it came from being intellectually ahead of peers, where curiosity had few companions. Sometimes it emerged from environments where emotional expression wasn't fully welcomed, but thinking was. The nervous system adapts to what brings safety and coherence. If understanding the world helped you navigate it, your mind leaned into that strength. Over time, reflection became second nature. Meaning became more important than immediacy. Depth became more satisfying than volume. None of this was a conscious choice. It was an adaptation. But adaptations come with trade-offs. When your inner world becomes rich and nuanced, You start needing a certain level of complexity and connection to feel nourished. Not intensity, not drama. Complexity, the ability to explore ideas, emotions, contradictions, and silence without rushing to resolution. And because most social structures don't prioritize this kind of exchange, opportunities for resonance become rare. This is where misunderstanding often deepens. Intelligent people are frequently told they're intimidating, or distant, or overly analytical. Sometimes they're told they should open up more, even when they're already open internally. The issue isn't lack of openness, it's lack of attunement. Being open doesn't help if there's no one tuned to the same frequency. It's important to pause here and remove hierarchy from the picture. This way of being isn't superior. It's not more evolved or more enlightened. It's simply less common. Other people are wired for immediacy, shared emotion, and collective rhythm. They find meaning through participation and togetherness. Neither orientation is right or wrong. They meet different needs, but when you're wired for depth, in a world optimized for speed, friction is inevitable. One of the most difficult parts of this experience is how invisible it is. From the outside, intelligent people often appear composed, capable, and socially functional. They don't always express loneliness in obvious ways. They may even doubt it themselves. After all, they aren't alone, they aren't rejected, they aren't disconnected in any obvious sense. And yet, something is missing. Often what's missing is the experience of being fully seen without having to translate yourself. The experience of speaking from the center of your awareness and being met there, rather than gently redirected back to the surface. The experience of not having to simplify, edit, or compress what you noticed in order to remain connected. This is where the paradox becomes clearer. Intelligence often brings adaptability. You can adjust your language, your tone, your interests to meet others where they are. You can mirror, listen, and empathize effectively. But when you do this habitually, you may end up being understood only at the level you present, not at the level you inhabit. Over time, this creates a subtle emotional asymmetry. You know others well, they know parts of you, but the core remains largely unmirrored, and the human nervous system is exquisitely sensitive to this. We feel connected, not when we are liked, but when we are recognized. There's another layer that rarely gets discussed. Many intelligent people experience emotions with a certain degree of abstraction, not detachment, but perspective. Feelings are felt, but they're also observed. This can make emotional expression less immediate and less obvious. Others may assume the feeling isn't there, when in fact it's simply being held differently. This difference in emotional style can further complicate connection. People often bond through shared emotional display. When your style is quieter, more internal, or more reflective, that bonding signal can get missed. Again, not because anything is wrong, but because the language doesn't translate easily. Over time, repeated experiences of partial connection can shape expectations. You may begin to assume that being fully known isn't realistic. That depth is something you carry alone. That connection is about coexistence rather than mutual recognition. These assumptions often form quietly, without conscious decision. And yet, despite this, the longing doesn't disappear. Loneliness in intelligent people often isn't loud or dramatic. It's subtle. It shows up as a sense of restlessness after social interaction, as a tendency to withdraw not because of dislike, but because of fatigue, as a preference for solitude that feels both nourishing and slightly sad. This is where judgment often creeps in. From the outside, solitude can look like avoidance. From the inside, it often feels like relief. When you're alone, your inner complexity doesn't have to be compressed. Your thoughts can unfold at their natural pace. Your emotional responses don't have to be translated or timed. Solitude becomes a place of coherence. But humans are relational beings. Even the most introspective mind still needs resonance, still needs to feel that its inner reality exists in shared space somewhere. When that doesn't happen, loneliness becomes not a signal of social failure, but a signal of unmet relational depth. It's worth saying clearly, this experience does not mean you are meant to be alone. It means your system is selective. It means connection, when it happens, needs to meet you at a certain level to register as real. This isn't a flaw, it's a sensitivity. There's also a quiet strength embedded here. People with this orientation often have a strong sense of internal continuity. They can think independently, tolerate uncertainty, and find meaning without constant external validation. They're often capable of deep empathy, not because they feel everything intensely, but because they understand context and complexity. But the cost is real. Depth takes time to recognize, and until it is recognized, it can feel isolating. Another paradox emerges here. Intelligent people often value authenticity deeply, but authenticity can be risky when you're used to being misunderstood. You may have learned to reveal yourself selectively, or gradually, or indirectly. You might test the waters with ideas before sharing feelings. You might use humor, intellect, or observation as a bridge. These strategies protect you. They also slow connection. Again, this isn't wrong, it's adaptive, but it helps explain why loneliness can persist even when you're socially capable. The very skills that help you navigate the world can make it harder for others to reach you without intention. There's also the matter of expectations. When your inner world is rich, you may unconsciously expect conversations and relationships to hold similar richness. When they don't, disappointment can arise, not as judgment, but as grief. Grief for a kind of meeting that feels possible, but rare. This grief is often unacknowledged. It doesn't have a clear object. It's not about losing someone. It's about not finding something. And because it's subtle, it's easy to dismiss or minimize. But it matters. Understanding this changes the narrative. Loneliness here isn't a sign that you're failing at connection. It's a sign that your system is attuned to a level of meaning that isn't always available. It's the ache of depth in a world that often prioritizes breadth. This doesn't mean connection is impossible. It means it's specific. It tends to emerge slowly, often unexpectedly, with people who share a tolerance for nuance and silence. People who don't rush to fill space. People who are curious rather than certain. These connections are fewer, but they're often profound. Until they appear, it can help to recognize that your experience makes sense, that the loneliness isn't random or pathological. It's a natural response to being oriented toward depth in an environment that doesn't always reflect it back. You are not broken. Your nervous system adapted intelligently. Your mind developed strengths that have value, even if they aren't always mirrored. The longing you feel isn't a demand to change who you are. It's a signal about what kind of connection truly nourishes you. There is more to explore here. How this orientation shapes intimacy, how it influences creativity, purpose, and emotional resilience. Our loneliness, in this context, can become a doorway rather than a dead end. If any of this felt quietly familiar, there's another layer beneath it, and it's worth taking the time to notice. Have you ever noticed how some thoughts stay with you longer than conversations do? How a single sentence can echo for days, while entire social moments fade almost immediately? It's not because you weren't paying attention. It's because your mind lingers where there's depth, not noise. Most people never stop to question that difference, but if you felt it, even quietly, it's worth asking why your inner world seems richer than the places you're asked to share it. There's a certain texture to this experience that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up in small moments. When you leave a gathering and feel mentally awake but emotionally untouched. When you replay a passing comment in your head because it hinted at something deeper that never got explored. When you feel most alive during a late-night conversation that drifts slowly, without urgency, without performance. This way of experiencing the world often goes unnoticed by others. From the outside, you may look calm, articulate, capable. You might even be seen as socially successful. But internally, there's a quiet sense that something essential is rarely met, not because people don't care, but because the level at which you experience life isn't the level most interactions are designed to reach. This is where misunderstanding begins. In a world that values speed, clarity, and simplicity. Depth can look like hesitation. Reflection can look like distance. Curiosity can look like overthinking, and sensitivity to nuance can look like indecision. Over time, these misinterpretations can create subtle pressure to adapt, to simplify yourself, to meet others where they are without asking whether anyone ever meets you where you are. What's important to understand is that this pattern didn't emerge because you failed to fit in. It emerged because your mind is oriented toward meaning, toward connections beneath the obvious, toward questions that don't always have immediate answers. This orientation isn't taught explicitly. It often develops quietly, through experience. Psychology has long observed that some people process the world primarily through integration rather than reaction. Instead of responding immediately to stimuli, they synthesize. They take in context, emotional tone, implication, history. This kind of processing uses more cognitive resources, but it also creates a richer internal narrative. Life isn't just happening to you, it's being woven into something larger. Neuroscience helps explain why this can feel isolating. Brains that naturally engage in deeper reflective processing often show higher activity in networks associated with self-awareness, imagination, and meaning-making. These networks don't shut off during social interaction. They stay online. So while a conversation unfolds, part of your mind is tracking layers beneath it. What's being avoided? What's implied? What this moment says about the person, the relationship, the broader pattern. Most social exchanges aren't built for this level of attention. They're built for coordination. Bonding, efficiency. They rely on shared scripts and emotional shorthand. When your mind is tuned to subtler frequencies, those scripts can feel thin. Not wrong, just incomplete. This is where loneliness enters, not as absence of people, but as absence of resonance. Often, this orientation toward depth formed early. Many people who experience this grew up needing to understand their environment deeply. Maybe emotions in the household were unpredictable. Maybe adults were inconsistent. Maybe curiosity became a way to make sense of complexity before it became overwhelming. Or maybe intellectual exploration was encouraged more than emotional expression, shaping a mind that learned to find safety in understanding. The nervous system remembers what works. If paying close attention helped you navigate uncertainty, your system leaned into that skill. Over time, it became natural. You learned to observe before you spoke, to think before you felt, to hold complexity internally rather than externalizing it immediately. This adaptation brought strengths. You likely developed insight, empathy, and the ability to tolerate ambiguity. You can sit with unanswered questions. You don't need constant stimulation. You can find meaning in quiet moments. But adaptations also create blind spots. When depth becomes your primary language, it can be hard to connect in spaces that don't speak it. Society doesn't always recognize this nuance. Instead, it offers labels: introverted, reserved, analytical, sometimes even cold. These labels flatten a rich inner world into something easier to categorize, and when those labels are repeated, you may begin to internalize them, wondering whether something about you is fundamentally mismatched with how connection is supposed to work. But this isn't a mismatch of worth. It's a mismatch of pace and depth. One of the most subtle challenges here is adaptability. Intelligent, reflective people are often highly adaptable socially. You can mirror others' energy. You can follow conversational norms. You could participate without difficulty. And because you can do this, others assume you're fully satisfied by it. What they don't see is the internal cost, the quiet effort it takes to compress your thoughts, the way you translate complex perceptions into simpler language to keep things flowing, the moments you choose not to speak because explaining would take too long, or disrupt the rhythm, or require a vulnerability that doesn't feel safe in that space. Over time, this creates an imbalance. You're present, but not fully expressed. You're connected, but not fully recognized. And the human psyche is deeply sensitive to this difference. We feel known, not when we are included, but when our inner experience is reflected back to us. When someone responds not just to what we say, but to what we mean, when they notice the pause before the sentence, not just the sentence itself, when they are curious about how we arrived at a thought, not just the thought. When this kind of recognition is rare, loneliness doesn't feel like emptiness. It feels like quiet hunger. Another layer that complicates this experience is emotional style. Many people with deep cognitive processing experience emotions with a certain spaciousness. Feelings arise, but they're held alongside awareness. You feel sadness, but you also understand it. You feel joy, but you're aware of its impermanence. This doesn't dull emotion, it contextualizes it. In a culture that often equates emotional authenticity with immediacy and intensity, this style can be misread. Others may assume you're detached, when in reality you're deeply present. You simply don't externalize every internal movement. Your emotions move inward before they move outward. This difference in expression can make bonding more complex. People often connect through shared emotional display. When your emotions are quieter, more internal, the signal can be missed, not because you aren't feeling, but because you're feeling in a language that isn't always recognized. Over time, repeated experiences of partial recognition can shape expectations. You may stop expecting to be fully understood. You may come to believe that depth is something you carry alone. That connection is about coexistence rather than mutual discovery. These beliefs often form slowly without conscious decision, and yet the longing remains. Loneliness here isn't about wanting more people. It's about wanting fewer, deeper points of contact. It's about wanting conversations that unfold rather than conclude. Relationships that allow for silence without discomfort. Spaces where curiosity is welcomed rather than rushed. This longing can coexist with contentment. You might enjoy solitude. You might find peace in your inner world. In fact, solitude often feels restorative because it allows your complexity to exist without constraint. Your thoughts can move at their natural pace. Your feelings don't have to be explained or timed. But even then, something human remains unmet. Because no matter how rich your inner life is, meaning deepens when it's shared. Not widely, precisely. There's a quiet grief in realizing that many connections will never reach that level. Not because people are incapable, but because their orientation is different. Some people find fulfillment in shared activity, shared rhythm, shared identity. Others find it in shared exploration. These orientations aren't better or worse. They're simply not interchangeable. When your orientation is toward exploration, you may feel out of place in environments built for performance or efficiency. You may feel unseen in relationships that prioritize comfort over curiosity. And that sense of being unseen can slowly harden into loneliness if it goes unacknowledged. But understanding this reframes the experience. Loneliness becomes less about what's wrong with you and more about what your system needs. It becomes information, not indictment. It tells you that depth matters to you. That meaning isn't optional, that you're attuned to layers others may not notice. And while that can feel isolating, it also carries value. People with this orientation often become bridges. They understand multiple perspectives. They can hold contradictions without collapsing them. They bring patience to complexity. They notice what's unsaid. These qualities are essential, even if they're not always celebrated. The challenge is that they're often developed in isolation. Another paradox emerges here. The more insight you have into others, the easier it is to accommodate them. And the easier it is to accommodate, the less visible your own needs become. You may find yourself being the one others confide in, the one who listens, the one who understands. This creates connection, but not necessarily reciprocity. Being needed is not the same as being known. This distinction matters. When your role becomes understanding others, your own inner world can remain unexplored in relationship. And over time, that can deepen loneliness, even as your social role expands. None of this means change is required. It means awareness is. Recognizing that your loneliness has context allows it to soften. It becomes less personal, less shame-laden. It becomes something you can relate to with curiosity rather than judgment. You're not broken for wanting depth. You're not difficult for needing resonance. Your experience makes sense given how your mind and nervous system developed. The world isn't wrong for being fast and surface-oriented. And you aren't wrong for being slow and deep. They simply don't always meet. What often brings relief isn't forcing connection where it can't exist, but allowing yourself to value the kind that can, to trust that fewer points of resonance are enough, to recognize that the ache you feel is not a flaw, but a signal pointing toward what truly nourishes you. There is more beneath this experience, how it shapes creativity, how it influences intimacy, how it connects to purpose and meaning. Loneliness in this context isn't an ending. It's an invitation to understand yourself more honestly. If this has felt familiar, it's because it's describing something real, something lived, and there is more to uncover quietly at your own pace. So, if you've been carrying this quiet sense of distance, even in moments that look connected from the outside, let this land gently. It was never a sign that something was missing in you. It was a sign that something in you is finely tuned. Your mind doesn't skim life. It listens for what's underneath. And when that depth isn't met, your system notices. The loneliness that comes from this isn't loud or obvious. It doesn't always push you away from people. Sometimes it sits beside you, even while you're laughing, even while you're talking, not as pain, but as a soft awareness that the conversation ended where you were just beginning. That awareness can feel heavy if you don't understand it, but once you do, it changes shape, because this way of being carries its own kind of intelligence. The ability to stay with complexity, the capacity to sit with silence without rushing to fill it, the instinct to search for meaning rather than distraction. These aren't accidents, they're adaptations. They helped you make sense of the world when clarity wasn't handed to you. They helped you stay intact when things were unclear, emotional, or unresolved. And here's the part that often goes unsaid. You don't need to become simpler to belong. You don't need to explain yourself better or shrink your inner world to make connection work. The connections that matter most to you will meet you where you already are. They tend to arrive slowly, sometimes unexpectedly, often quietly. But when they do, you'll recognize them not by intensity, but by ease, by the feeling that you don't have to translate yourself. Until then, it's okay to trust your rhythm, to honor the spaces where your mind feels alive, to stop interpreting your depth as distance. You were never meant to resonate with everything, only with what's real for you. And if this reflection stayed with you longer than most things do, that's not an accident either. It means there's another layer of understanding waiting to be explored, not loudly, not urgently, just patiently when you're ready.